Going on.
They grew up together. They played the same sports. They attended the same schools. And now they even teach together. You're listening to DC and DH on the D&D Dynamite 80s podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of D&D Dynamite 80s. I'm DH.
I'm DC.
And we're here to take you on another fun-filled look back at some of the things that made the decade of the 80s what we consider the greatest decade of all time.
Got that right, brother.
It was a fun decade, right? A lot of different times back then.
Got that right.
I'm really excited tonight. DC, I'm going to throw it over to you. We got a
Sure.
coming in. I'm going to let you go and do the introduction. And
Absolutely. We're a very, very honored group tonight. We got Zak Shaffer joining us from the LA area, I think. And he'll get more into that here in just a second. But he's a voice actor. He's a singer as well. But also he does a co-host with a podcast that I've listened to. It's great stuff. Maybe we can learn a bunch of things from it. I'm sure we can. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Hopefully he'll give us some tips. That's what we're needing.
somebody.
Right. But that program is called a $2 late fee. And I think they emphasize or kind of focus in on the 80s movies and people that were in 80s movies and things like that. So anyway, we'll get into more detail about that here in just a second. Zak, how are you?
Well, I'm happy to be here, guys. DHDC. Thanks for having me on the show. It's truly a pleasure.
We appreciate you taking the
Thank
time.
you for having some time for us.
No doubt. You know that I don't know if you guys have kids, but the summer months tend to turn into activity central here. So
Absolutely. Well, here's the deal for us. We're at the point now with grandkids. So we go, here's the good part of that. When they get worn out or we get worn out, they can go home. And then we can take back up and start again on a new day. So that's the privilege to that. He's got what, Coach? You got how many?
5.
That's what I thought. 5.
Amazing.
The young man that he is, he's got 5, and I've got one that just came about. Well, he's actually almost a year old. Gone by fast.
Congrats.
So anyway, that's the fun thing. So when the teaching gig stops in the summer, even though I do a little coaching on the side with football, I get to do the pop thing.
Right.
So I've been keeping the little one here a little bit while mom goes back to work and all that good stuff. So
that's great to hear. Great to hear. Yeah. So, my son is 7 and going on 8 in a week, actually less than a week. And he's going to see his granddad back in Michigan later this summer for the first time in 4 years. So he's very excited. We're very excited.
They're excited on that end too. I guarantee you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell you, being on LA, this time of year, it's hot, but I'm in Santa Monica, so it's a little bit cooler. Got the ocean breeze.
Awesome. He's just down the road from the Threes Company.
Yeah,
folks.
I always tell my kids, if I'd have known how much my grandkids would, I would have had them first and forget the kids.
The Regal Beagle.
There you go. We got to go to the pub. That's right.
Yeah, Shay J's.
So that's right. So Zak, tell me this. How did I got a little bit of it because I checked in. By the way, it was a great live podcast that you had here recently.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed that very much. And you touched on it a little bit. The way I think I understood this, you guys both worked in the video stores?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So way back when, one of my first jobs was working at a video store, of which I have a plethora of crazy stories to tell, which I do tell. We have a Patreon show called Tales from the Video Store. So it's exclusive to people who sign up on our Patreon. And
right.
we tell wacky stories about working at the video store, people we worked with, customers that were odd, to say the least. And then,
right.
And, we just had Diane Franklin on the show on our $2 late fee on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
And she, I was asking her about going to the video store back in the day. And I had to I had to, circle through that memory bank of hers. But we tell a lot of stories from back in the day. This podcast did not come out of the video store idea, but
Huh,
it did come
okay.
out of our love of movies from the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
And we did, yeah, Dustin, my co-host, he worked at Blockbuster and I worked at a mom and pop shop called Video Man. And so very different types of video stores. But I think, you know, I spent way too much time in front of a TV when I was a kid. And as a teenager and young adult, all I did was rent movies and watch movies over and over and over again. And I loved them so much. And I had a film teacher in college who I just thought was the coolest. And all she did was talk about movies all day. And I remember one day saying to my girlfriend at the time, and I said, I wish I could do that. And she's like, what, make movies? I'm like, no, just talk about movies all day. And so it kind of, you know, the universe
Ah,
works in weird ways. And here I am
yeah,
20, 30
yeah,
years later doing it and interviewing some really cool people along the
yeah,
way.
yeah.
You know, Dustin and I don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that's a big piece of it. We have a depth of knowledge that may be a little deeper than some people, but at the same
Yeah.
time too, we don't claim to be purist historical fact checkers, you know, and that actually gets me in trouble with him sometimes because I'll say something. He's like, I don't think that's true. And I'll be like, really? I thought it was, but then we'll go back and have to edit it out. But yeah, we have a good time just talking about the movies that we loved overall and the
Yeah.
music from those movies that we love. Cause that's the
Yeah.
other component is the soundtracks to
Sure.
these movies are so great, or sometimes they're not so great.
Right.
But like I
stick out
said,
to you. Yeah.
right. But sometimes, like I said, there are some times we've interviewed some really, really amazing guests, and we're having a good time doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I watched the interview with Diane Franklin. I thought you guys, I mean, it was so entertaining. I really appreciate what you guys were doing on there. And as a podcaster, or well, so we think, DC and
We
I
pretend.
think we are,
You are.
but watching you guys, and I mean, it's so fun for me to study how other people do on their podcast.
Mm.
That relationship between you and your co-host is there.
Mhm.
And kind of talk about how all that came about.
Yeah, I'd love to. Gosh, I was a teacher just like you guys back in the day. I was a kindergarten teacher for many years.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah,
Bless your heart.
15. Thank you. That's why I got the gray hair now.
Sure.
And then, you know, met my wife and we wanted to have a kid. And because Los Angeles is insane with the amount of money it costs to take care of a child, she said, you know, you could be a stay-at-home dad and we would just basically the amount of money we would have cost to put him in daycare, our son would have offset whatever you made as a teacher. So I semi-retired from teaching and she said, what is it that you're not doing that you want to do? And I wanted to pursue voice acting. And I had been wanting to do that since I was a little kid. And I started doing that. And I had a friend of mine who introduced me to Dustin, who's also a voice actor. And the two of us hit it off right away with our love of 80s movies. And about a year into our friendship or so, I became every struggling actor in LA. You know, what have you done? Oh, I auditioned all the time. I'm always auditioning, you know? And I equate it to being in a long-term relationship to suddenly dating all the time, you know, where you're like, oh, is this going to happen? Is this going to be the one? And then you spend a bunch of money on the girl and then you don't hear from her ever again. So I thought, what can I do to not get myself like so beat down all the time? And my buddy had started a podcast called Podcasting After Dark. And I joined him on that. And I said, but I want to do something that I love, you know, it was 80s movies and the music and all that stuff. And I asked Dustin, and I said, I'd love to do this with you. And he said, well, do you have a title in mind? I said, yeah, $2 late fee. He's like, sold, done. So we started out, we kind of did what I think a lot of people do. You record a bunch of episodes ahead of time. And the acting component the guest component didn't come until maybe 2 or 3 episodes in, where I thought I could reach out to these people and see if they'll want to come on the show. And we
Yeah.
did. We started with a guy named Mitch Gaylord, who is an Olympic
Yeah.
gold medalist.
Yeah.
He was in a really
He was in a movie. Yeah.
cheeseball movie called
Yeah.
American Anthem.
That's it.
With
Yeah.
Ja-
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
remember
so-
him. I remember him driving around, I think in a Jeep or something.
Yep. That's
Yep.
right. And having like a high bar in the middle of the forest or something like that. Not as
Right,
bad
right,
as Jim
right.
Cotta, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And that
stuff
movie
like
was
that sticks out though. Yeah. Absolutely.
Totally. That movie was supposed to shape him and make him into a superstar, but it didn't. And he's living in Texas now, and he owns a Pilates like franchise out there with his wife.
Okay.
And he's a personal trainer, and he's living a very good life, happy. But he took the time of over an hour to sit down and talk to us about his life, his career, and everything.
Yeah.
And it's a really good interview. It was our first one. And I looked at Dustin and I'm like, this could be a part of our show. So we started mapping out, we started strategically booking guests and then that we were fans of, and then picked a movie from their filmography to kind of go off of, you know?
Okay.
So we've had a huge amount of guests. I think we've had over 30 guests on our show. We've, you know, it's run the gamut from music composers to, you know, actors, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got DH.
Well, the thing, just to kind of follow up on that, just kind of a compliment for you guys. You can tell that, I guess for me, when I'm watching different podcasts, I can tell when the co-hosts get along and are kind of friends versus when they're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
So one of the things I kind of wonder on that is, do you guys do a lot of prep as far as preparing pre-questions going into it, or do you kind of let the interview flow?
A little bit of both. You know, what we do oftentimes is whatever movie coincides with the person we're interviewing, we try to watch that movie first. For example, we had two people from the movie Streets of Fire on. We had Michael Pare from Eddie and the Cruisers and every B movie you can think of in the 80s and 90s. And then a guy named Stoney Jackson. If you don't know Stoney's story, it's a good one. Like he's one of those guys that like maybe got forgotten because, you know, some of the choices he made, the roles he took were maybe not the best for him. But the guy, well, I will tell you this, if he hadn't done a certain move in Streets of Fire, a certain music superstar wouldn't be known for that particular move. I'll just leave it at that as a little tease.
Sure. Yeah.
But so with these guys, we look, you know, do a little bit of research on who they are, try to find some fun facts about them, but not too much because you obviously want the conversation to flow naturally. Dustin and I have a natural rapport. We have a mutual love of 80s. We also have a mutual love of like making people feel good about themselves and having, you know, bringing out the best in people. Because the world would be a much better place if we could all just do something kind for each other every now and then. And so, we, you know, we do a little bit of prep, but not too much, and it just flows naturally. I think it's important, like you said, to have a relationship with your co-host. You know, you guys don't have to be best buddies in the world, but you have to have a mutual love and respect for something.
Right.
And you guys know, there's a million podcasts out there in the world, and some of them feel like it's one guy talking about his passion, and that's great. But if you can tell, if people are arguing, and I've listened to a few where they're arguing with each other, and you're like, well, I don't know if I want to listen to this, but they think it's comedy, I guess. Who knows? It's just not for me. Yeah. So that's like, to answer your question, the long version, it's a little bit of both.
Now I know one thing that I always like to ask, and DC, I'm going to jump in here with this. I always like, what was one of your most embarrassing moments in a podcast? Because I can tell you ours. We got this was when we first started. We got halfway through an interview and realized we did not hit record.
Oh no!
We were like, but luckily the person we had on was nice enough to start.
They were great, and they just went with it. And hey, that's okay. We'll just keep going.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well,
the tech teacher that you are, you didn't remind me to hit the button.
Yeah, I left him in control of it.
It happens.
That was the mistake.
it
We were,
happens.
well, here's the thing. We were so excited about getting started with this stuff.
Mm,
Because like that was one of like maybe the second podcast we ever done.
okay.
I think it was the second one. And we were just thrilled to get going, you know, and
Yeah.
we kind of missed a button here, you know. And I
Well, it
looked down.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
It happened. I mean, like, shoot, I've been doing this for 3 years now and going on 4 actually. And I will tell you, DH, to answer, I know specifically the most embarrassing or most like, oh no, I can't believe that happened moment. We had just switched over our internet provider about a month prior to doing this interview with Michael Pare. And for some reason, just the internet on my end cut out when we were doing the interview. And we were halfway through it. And then suddenly I was gone. And fortunately, and this is the part where you have a great co-host, Dustin picked up the slack and continued the rest of the interview till I could join back on a little bit later. I joined on and chimed in. I was able to ask a really great question about a horror film he did in the 90s called Bad Moon. And then suddenly my internet went out again. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This has never happened. And it did. Chalk that up with just one of those moments. The interview ended up coming off really well. I was happy with it. But I was super bummed out that I didn't get the back end of that conversation, because I will tell you, every guest we've had on our show has always, as we wrap up, they said, this was a lot of fun. It's better than I expected it would be. And so I think that's a big thing too. We don't just get people on. There's an old Chris Farley skit from Saturday Night Live where he sits around he's doing a talk show and he's like, that movie you did? I really like that movie. Yeah. And he's got nothing more to say, I remember this is, I've never really told this story on the air. I met Al Pacino once when I was a teacher. He came in my classroom. I worked at a private school. Came in my classroom with his, at the time, wife, Beverly D'Angelo from the Vacation movies, right?
Yeah.
They have 2 kids together. And I won't tell too much of the story because it might get me in trouble, but I will say that he came in my room and he sat down in the back of the classroom while I was teaching with the tour guide. And the tour guide, I sent the kids off to their lesson and I kind of walked to the back and introduced myself, and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. And the tour guide spoke through him and he spoke through her, I guess. It was really surreal. And at the end of the day, I had this realization. I'm like, you know what? Acting is just a job. It's a job, and good people should just be good people. Normal people should be normal people. And there was a moment where I'm like, yeah, he's a little different. It's a little different. Someday I'll tell you that whole story over a beer, but
there you go.
There you go.
But I will say, they're just like you and me. Hopefully they're more down to earth than others, because there are some that are all up in the clouds. But a lot of the people we've interviewed are just thankful for the fact that we remember them and we appreciate their work they did. And at the end of the day, who doesn't want to just be appreciated for what they've done in life?
Exactly. And one of the things, like I said, that I really appreciate when I'm watching podcasts, and especially like when I started watching you guys, was just that feeling that you get that it's like we're sitting down at a table having a conversation.
Yeah.
And you become part of that conversation. So you guys do a great job of that. I really
thank you.
That about you.
Yes. Yep.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
I guess the next thing to kind of go along with what we're talking about, here's my thing, and it's been great advice, but it's hard to take sometimes for me personally, is because I put a lot of effort into trying to get guests. 50 million emails, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then to either, get on, not there. That's happened to us. That kind of thing. Or never hearing back from somebody, even if it's a manager, not even hearing back. That just kind of just makes me a little bit raw,
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Like you were saying, they're people that has hit success a little bit better than somebody else maybe, but they're still people,
Yeah,
so
I agree. I mean, it is, trust me.
So, everybody says, well, just brush it, and it's tough.
It is tough. And look, like I said, I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I hit moments where I'm like, why didn't I why haven't I heard back from that person? Yeah, it is
Yeah,
weird. And then
exactly.
sometimes you do, and you get the typical, well, they can't do it at this time, dot, dot, dot. I get
Yep.
that. And there are times when contractually they're obligated to not do interviews for a while. Every now and then when you,
How does that work? Yeah, I've heard that before.
yeah.
So,
So for example, oh gosh, I think his name's Yuji Okamoto. He played Chosen in Karate Kid Part 2 and in the Cobra
yeah,
Kai series.
yeah.
Yeah. And I had a good friend of mine, Derek Wayne Johnson, who
Mhm.
directed a great documentary about John G. Advolson, the director of Karate Kid and Rocky, called Underdog. He became a good friend of our show and us, and he said, "Oh, I'll reach out to Yuji. He's a friend of mine." And he said, he can't talk right now because he's working on Cobra Kai season 5. And I said, totally get that. He's like, but circle
Okay.
back, after the show drops later on this year, and maybe he can do it. So sometimes the
I
managers hold
see.
them back. Yeah, sometimes but don't get discouraged. And it's not always a bad idea to do a follow-up email, because there's an actor named Wings Hauser. He's been in over 200 movies, I guess, and TV shows. The guy's a legend, a living legend. I did an interview with him through my other show, Podcasting After Dark. And I wrote to him in like January of this year. I didn't hear back till March. So, stranger things can happen. You just got to keep the faith. It just takes that one to get you back in it, and sometimes reaching out to people that are a little less known might do the trick. I will tell you this for everyone listening who aspires to be a podcaster or has interest in it. It's not always the actor that has the best stories. Sometimes it's, the director, Jeff Canoe, who directed Revenge of the Nerds and Gotcha and Troop Beverly Hills and a bunch of these great 80s movies. That guy said to us, I've lived enough of a life and I'm happy where I'm at, where I don't care what bridges I burn. I'm just going to burn them all down. And he started telling some stories on our show. Case in point, he was supposed to direct Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams. Well, he got fired from that because of an A-list actor at the time, was good buddies with the head of Disney. And he tells that story and it's wild. And you're like, wait, he did, because he doesn't care.
Yeah.
I've had writers. I've interviewed the writer of an 80s movie called Vamp. He also directed it too. Great underground 80s vampire movie. But he wrote all the Equalizer movies with Denzel Washington. Oh, wow. I think he's writing the new Lethal Weapon movie that's coming out, or already did. That guy has a ton of great stories. So it's not always the actor. The actor will get you a lot of hits, right? The actor will get you the attention, which is fine. But the writer, the director, the makeup guy, the stunt man, sometimes those guys have great stories. And it's always worth, considering that for your show.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice.
Don't be afraid to reach out to those guys too.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you really quick. I had Vince DiCola on our show. He's a musician. He did the music for Rocky IV. He did the music for Transformers, the movie. He wrote a bunch of music as well. He may not be a flashy guy, like say, I don't know, Peter Cetera from Power of Love, from the Glory of Love from Karate Kid 2. Might not be that flashy, lead singer of Chicago, but he tells some fantastic stories about working with Sylvester Stallone, working on Transformers, which was a nightmare to him, I guess, because he had to do a whole 90-minute score in like a short amount of time. But the dude tells great stories, and he just loved the fact that we appreciated his talent. So there you go.
Sure. Zach, where can everybody kind of follow you? We've already put that in the bag for you about the $2 late fee, but give us all the details there that everybody listening can follow you guys.
Sure, thanks. You can find me at $2latefee.com, TWO, also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and on the streets of Santa Monica. No, I'm kidding. And patreon.com/$2 late fee is our exclusive series. We have a bunch of shows on there besides Tales from the Video Store. We do a segment called $2 questions with our celebrity guests. Why does Zach own this? All the garbage that I have in my house that I probably should get rid of, but for some reason I held on to it all these years. And what does Dustin know? It's a funny segment where I goof on Dustin with trivia and try to stump him, but it's that's a bunch of stuff on our Patreon. Yeah, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast platforms. Check us out. We're fun. We try to be, not take ourselves too seriously. We call ourselves the best 80s podcast around or something, but it's all tongue in cheek.
Folks, believe me, trust me.
No, it's good stuff. That's for sure.
Check out their podcast. I absolutely loved it. I'm a fan of it myself, so I'm listening.
Absolutely.
Guys, check them out. Amazing podcast. And folks, remember, you can find us. I'll go ahead and throw this out there because I always forget. You can find
Thanks,
us.
Zach.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
You can find us on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Republic, Twitter. We're in the Twitter sphere with D&D Dynamite 80s. Facebook page, D&D Dynamite 80s, and check out our website, D&D Dynamite 80s. And of course, the YouTube channel where this is going to be posted real soon. Again,
Mere minutes.
Can you
Right
guess
on.
what the name of the YouTube channel is? That's right, D&D Dynamite 80s.
You got it.
Zach, I really appreciate you joining us. And I just have to say, I really enjoy your show and I'll continue listening. And I hope
Absolutely
starts listening because we really enjoy what you guys do.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. You guys are really cool. DHDC, just two dudes that are obviously, having fun, have a good time, keep the good fight, and don't get down about it. You know what? That's another big thing too. You may be, yelling out to the universe and no one's hearing you. Someone's hearing you. Not everybody has the time to write a note, but you know what? You do have an audience, and just don't give up. If it's something you love, then that'll all come naturally. So just keep rocking and rolling, as Dirk Diggler said in Boogie Nights.
I appreciate that. Zach.
We appreciate that. Thank you, my friend. If
Thanks,
you hold tight there, Zach, hold tight. Close us out, big guy, DH.
Close us out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for another episode of D&D Dynamite 80s. And as we always end with, and as Zach kind of alluded to, folks,
Yep.
It doesn't cost anything extra to be kind. Be nice.
You got that right.
Just be nice, and we'll all be in a better place.
Keep watching and keep listening to those 80s, guys. See you next time. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, guys. Bye.